Hello gamers. This week, I want to talk about character flaws. Now, if you're trying to make every ability score good or really maximize your character, don't play Dungeons & Dragons. Go play a video game or something, because the game isn't just about combat. It's about role-playing, storytelling, and cooperation. And it almost takes away to have a character that's good at everything, because then you sacrifice a lot more. Having a bad ability score is something sacred, and I'm going to talk more about that. If you're playing this game to metagame, well, that could be fun, but it's not exclusively that. If you want to level up the most and get the most XP and deal the most damage, go play a video game. This is kind of like the same thing for the Dungeon Master. If you want to railroad your players, go write a story or do some sort of interactive theater where you play all the characters. Wait a minute. That could be a thing. Just say interactive theater and just the patrons just walk in and play Dungeons & Dragons. They'd be confused, but it could work. So what does that mean, having a bad ability score? Well, for some it's pretty obvious. If you have low intelligence, well, the first thing you think of is dumb, but that's not necessarily what it means. It means that you're not educated. Intelligence and wisdom are different. Wisdom is worldly knowledge and mental fortitude, while intelligence is a learned trait, which is why history, religion, arcana, in this world are all things that require a lot of knowledge. So you're not learned, so you might not be illiterate, which might bring up problems or even struggle with some language or tactical sort of things, and you can kind of play that up. You could always play it like Grog from Critical Role, where you're just dumb, but I feel like there's more you can do to it. It's some sort of secret shame, like you're not literate, but you don't want people to know, or something like that. Or you think you know what you're doing because you have a high deception, but in reality, you're terrible at like investigation. And like I think Puffin Forrest made a video where he had a character that was really good at deception but terrible at investigation. He was supposed to be a detective, so everyone thought he was good, but he wasn't. Like, that sort of stuff can be really fun to roleplay. So that's intelligence. Then we have, well, strength's another obvious one. If you're weak physically, then that affects you a certain way. You could play it off as kind of sickly, but I feel like that's more of a constitution type thing. For strength, just having it as a bad score, it means that you can't perform the same sort of heroic feats that other players can. Like, strength is based for jumping and climbing and all these sort of athletic feats that you as a player, being a weakling, just can't perform. And that has some interesting interactions more on the lines of travel and combat than, say, role-playing, or maybe it could be sort of a reason why people underestimate you. Like, oh, that weakling, he can't, beat me, and then boom, magic. So it's something. It's less of a role play thing. The physical traits are harder, but I feel like Constitution is one of the better ones, because if you have, no one ever goes though Constitution. And I think it would be really fun to try to do that, because you can play your character off as sickly, and maybe because they're so weak, they're a coward. And this could be something that isn't too hard to still have some use in combat and be afraid, especially if you're a support or caster, because you're doing these things for your own protection. You're casting shields up, or you make choices that are selfish because you want to protect yourself. instead of helping an ally, you heal yourself, or all these sort of interactions, and you can still be a decent support, but just stay in the back, and it's something that's not entirely addressed. You can also play, as very simply, like you're a very powerful wizard, but you just can't maintain that degree of power for very long. You can't concentrate on your spells, so it brings this sort of, I think having something bad that could happen in combat, like a saving throw that you're not good at, especially because saving throws normally interact, especially the mental ones, interact with the players in a certain way. Like wisdom is normally done for like mind control and fear, or charisma to seduce, which can be really interesting to play off by having a weak ability score for that, so your saving throw is weak, and that may be part of your character, which is why wisdom might be another good score for a coward, because fear is always wisdom based. You could also play it out as not worldly, because wisdom is you understand how the world works, you've had experience, which is why you can, survival is a wisdom based trait. You can track things. Perception is something, it's not about seeing the world around you, it's seeing what isn't obvious, what is taking that picture and finding in it what's important, which a lot of unworldly people can't do. I always thought it was kind of weird that wisdom was perception, but I think I figured it out, guys. So there's that, and then there's charisma. Charisma, that's a pretty obvious one. If you're not good at charisma, it means that you have trouble with social interaction, you might be shy or socially awkward, or be sort of kind of weak to other people's charms, because maybe you don't have entirely high self-esteem, or you don't know how to judge people. For example, President Ulysses S. Grant, he might have been a decent warrior, but in presidency, he chose all the wrong people. He didn't have a sense of who was corrupt and who was good, which really put a bad rep on him. So that's something that's interesting. Oh, the shady guy, I don't know anything better than to try to talk to him. He seems nice enough. So that can be very interesting, because it brings your players into traps that they normally wouldn't, and not having that metagame knowledge, as I talked about earlier, is what makes the game very lively, having those weaknesses. Dexterity is pretty similar to strength, honestly. You can't perform the same feats of agility to avoid things. You're clumsy. That can be fun to play up. It's pretty light. Just, find basic things of, oh, I'm not good at this. What could this mean for my character? Again, like fleshing out characters, and it really just brings a livelihood to that. Now thinking about it, wisdom isn't a bad score not to have. Like, I've seen a lot of people who have low charisma, low strength, low dex, or low intelligence, but never low constitution or wisdom. There's not a lot of negatives to having a low wisdom score. Wisdom is overrated. Wait. Be right back. Hello, gamers. I'm going to be talking about the 10 reasons why wisdom is overrated. Number 1, it has like no negative consequences to not having good wisdom. I mean, survival? Who cares? You're in a wilderness campaign? Dummy, just use ranger. They're like terrible at everything else, but they're like OP in survival-based games. Duh. And perception? No one uses perception these days. It was so last year to make a perception roll. Besides, everyone's got good perception. I bet someone else can make that perception check. You don't have to make it. Investigation is the real trait. Passive investigation, that's the future. Observant is all about passive investigation. Huh? Yeah, that's right. Suck at perception. And insight? And know if someone's lying or not? Well, you should know if they're lying. Because wisdom saves? Fear? Who even uses the afraid condition anymore? Oh, I gotta move away from you. I can still shoot you with disadvantage. But, I mean, who even uses that? I mean, fear was so last year. I mean, no one's afraid of anything. They're all desensitized to violence because of video games and rock music, huh? Yeah. You can use the honor score, which is a variant ability score in the Dungeon Master's Guide, where honor checks are in a campaign that is very socially based and about interaction and not offending others' honor, like in a dwarf-heavy campaign or campaign with like a Japanese setting where that sort of thing is very important. And interacting with other nobles, you can't offend their honor or let them offend your honor. And that's better than insight. Who needs that when you can offend someone and have it heard just by making a check? Screw that vicious mockery, huh? And by the way, what even is that name? Wisdom. There's dumb in the name. Not so happy about wisdom now, huh? Yeah. And what classes use wisdom, huh? Ranger? Who cares? Druid? Just be an animal and use strength. You don't need wisdom. And monk. For a key save DC and a better armor class, just use dexterity and wear some armor. Do monks have armor proficiency? And that's the 4 reasons why I hate wisdom. It's overrated. Pick something else, okay? You know, have high intelligence or honor, huh? Or maybe play a sanity-based campaign, huh? Take that, wisdom. Instead of making a wisdom check against fear, you make a sanity save. And the more sane you are, ooh, that's like the most, I figured it out. Sanity is like the best role-playing thing ever. I mean, you just use it for horror campaigns, which like aren't supposed to necessarily be huge in anything but scaring people, but it's like great for role-playing because if you're an insane character, you're just all wacky and you have like long-term madness, which can be really fun to role-play. You know what? If your players are okay with it, they should like give characters madness more often. I think that would be a lot of fun, you know? Like, just having some sort of weird quirk, like, yo, that's Timmy right there. You can't see him? Yeah. Well, he doesn't like you either. Or having, like, super obsessive compulsive disorder or something weird where you have to like polish your sword like 3 times a day or something, and like, gosh, just the stuff that gets going, you know? I think flaws in general, not just ability scores, but other stuff like madness or things like in the Dungeon Master's Guide where all this I, I don't even know. I'm not getting sponsored or anything, and I don't think I ever will. But in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is a option for losing limbs, and like if you get a big scar, you have disadvantage on all charisma checks except intimidation, which you have advantage. So it's like a good change, you know? It's like, oh, he's edgy. That's cool to play. But then again, now everyone uses strength for intimidation. What about the good old days, you know? Or having a lost limb, you know? That's fun to play out. Now, let's do an aside. And I'm going to talk about a different role-playing game, but you didn't expect that. Savage Worlds. Now, when building your character in Savage Worlds, you can choose any amount of traits and abilities as long as you have a certain amount of disadvantages to back it up. And so, for example, you could maybe you want to have a lot of magic or wealth or strength or something, but you have to sacrifice something else. Like, and they're not like abilities. There is ability-based stuff, but there's also all these weird, quacky, quacky's not a word, wacky stuff like, oh, you know, you're ugly or something, or you have some sort of rival that may intervene with the gameplay all the time, or maybe you're just really sickly, or you're missing a limb. That's a disadvantage. Or you're like just really old or a child, you know, and that gives you a disadvantage on bad scores on certain things. And you know, maybe you're just some lowly child who's sickly and has lived indoors all days, but he's very, very wealthy. Or you're a blind quadriplegic dude who is like the greatest wizard in the world. I don't even know how that'd be cool. You just have this like guy who doesn't even know if he has a purpose, but like that makes me think about this. Oh gosh, it's called. There's some book. Let me check. I can't find it, but there's this book about these superheroes, but they all have disabilities. I mean, it's not like, you know, some superheroes actually do, but like, you know, like maybe you are very sun sensitive, like you're albino, but you have the power to control weather, so you can keep clouds above your head at all times. Or sometimes, like, I think, like, you know, maybe it cancels out, like you're in a wheelchair but you have super speed, which there's still some stuff you can do, but it's very limited. And so it's just kind of like messing around with that kind of idea. I think that's pretty cool. It's by some movie critic guys. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, comments. All I'm saying is that it can be very interesting as a character, role-playing wise, and just to build up your character as a real person, to have flaws, because not everyone's perfect, you know? Not everyone's good at combat. Not everyone is, you know, super smart or able to handle the scary things in this world. And I think having flaws is really flavorful. 3.5, I think that's the correct edition, had anti-feats. And those are like really cool because you can take an extra feat if you take an anti-feat. So it's kind of like the same idea from Savage Worlds, because you're creating disadvantage on one thing, but getting an advantage on another. And so, like, for example, I think one's like, or I think one at least recreated by some people in the fandom, was like, the gods must hate you, and where you kind of have this like vampiric sort of weakness where you just can't benefit from magical healing at all. So the only way to cover is just by natural means, which is like a real disadvantage, especially if you're downed. I think another one is just like a loss of limb or something, or an addiction. Like, oh, like this really gritty character that like is like really badass, but they got, all sorts of inner demons, and they dive into the the addictive pleasures in life to avoid the pain of the real world. And they obviously have a scar. So just like, this really gets your thought process going, right? Like, the sort of characters you can make by having some sort of disability actually enables your character to be more real and interesting. You could just play this perfect character and win all the time, and look for something, I can do that. Investigate, I can do that. Fight, I can do that. Cast spells, or you can be like not good at something, and that is a platform for other players to be good. Okay, I'm the guy who picks locks and sneaks into things, but I can't talk to people for my life. And that's the Bard's platform. And so you have these things that may seem like a disadvantage, and you may feel bad that you have this low ability score, but there's other characters in your party, they can shine too. And you can always have another campaign some other time where you play a character that can have different things that they're good at. You don't have to be good at everything. I feel like that actually takes away from who your character is. They're kind of blunt. So I know a lot of people have talked about having a flaw, but I'm really trying to dive into that, because it's not just about ability scores. One character in my latest campaign after the TPK is a more elderly individual, and that affects how they roleplay and how they interact with the world, which I think is really unique. And sort of taking that different perspective and having those flaws as a character really makes them more wholesome and thought out character than they'd otherwise would be. And I love seeing that. It's great. Just as, things in your backstory can come back to haunt you and maybe make your life as a player more difficult, but it's fun. You have sort of encounters and you get to you like it, though, right? That sounds demented. Like, having your backstory come together and finally having that moment where you get to defeat your rival league makes you feel empowered. Or when you overcome your fear, when you're that coward who overcomes their fear or their inner demons, it really makes for an inspiring moment. And I think that payoff's worth it, because it's not like you're taking too much away in the moment, because in combat or some certain senses you may be, but you're getting so much more from roleplay. And I think those characters will be the most memorable ones. Dungeons & Dragons is not about being perfect. Again, play a video game, feel good, beat things up. But it's about challenge. Well, even in video games. Do you like having things easy or a challenge? And I guess that's the point I'm trying to get across. So Again, as always, I have no outro. Fine. And you don't want this. I will sing if you don't go. I'll do it. Beware. You got the perfect warlock, their weapons and supplies, but you need a place to track your stuff, cause you're so disorganized. You click open the webpage, you heard about a critical role, and now you're ready to kick some butt in a mineshaft full of gnolls. It's D&D, D&D Beyond, yeah, D&D, D&D Beyond. You got your sword, and you got your invisible wand, cause it's D&D, D&D, D&D Beyond. I'm almost certain my sweet mates heard that. Also, I'm not sponsored, or probably ever will be. Hopefully they don't get mad. Hey, I have 10, that's the benefits of having only 10 subscribers, huh? I don't make any revenue anyway.